Welcome to Outside Views. Today we continue our series BRITURN, the Obstacles. And this is Chapter 15, Energy. As we examine the possibility of the UK joining the European Union again, it is essential to remember that this would not be a simple reversal of Brexit. The UK would need to apply as a new candidate and undergo the rigorous EU accession process, adhering to all the requirements for membership. And today's focus is on Chapter 15 of the Acquis Communautaire, the energy policy. And before diving into the specifics of energy policy, it's crucial to understand the fundamental prerequisites for joining the EU. The so-called Copenhagen criteria define the basic conditions that every applicant country must meet before these accession talks can even begin. And these criteria include political stability with democratic governance and human rights protections, a functioning market economy capable of handling the pressure of EU competition, and the ability to adopt and implement the full body of EU law, known as the Acquis Communautaire. And this means that joining the EU again is not a negotiation in the way many people understand the term. It's a process of fulfilling strict requirements set by the EU. Rather than a back-and-forth discussion, it's about the UK proving that it can comply with all EU regulations and obligations. And each chapter of negotiations is therefore not about bargaining, but about demonstrating readiness for integration. And energy policy is at the core of European integration, ensuring security of supply, market competitiveness, and environmental protection. The EU has created a unified internal energy market that facilitates energy trade, regulates competition, and promotes renewable energy development. And for the UK, aligning with this framework again would mean significant legal and infrastructural adjustments, as well as reintegration into EU energy networks. One of the fundamental aspects of EU energy policy is market liberalization. The EU aims to create an internal energy market where electricity and gas can flow freely across borders, ensuring competitive pricing and security of supply. The UK was previously a part of the system, benefiting from cross-border electricity interconnectors, integrated gas networks, and participation in European energy trading platforms. Since Brexit, the UK has lost automatic access to the EU's internal energy market, resulting in increased costs and regulatory barriers for energy trade. Joining the EU again would mean restoring full participation in these mechanisms, but it would also require compliance with many EU market regulations, but also competition rules and state aid policies. And energy security is another key component. The EU has worked extensively to diversify energy sources, but also reduce dependency on external suppliers and enhance cross-border energy cooperation. For the UK, Brexit meant leaving key cooperative frameworks such as the EU solidarity mechanisms and emergency response coordination in case of supply disruptions. If the UK were to rejoin the EU, it would need to align with energy security policies, including mandatory strategic reserves and crisis response mechanisms. And this would also mean contributing to EU-wide efforts to reduce dependence on energy imports from geopolitical rivals, particularly in light of global energy crises and instability in supplier regions. Another critical area is the transition to renewable energy. The EU has ambitious climate goals, aiming to become carbon neutral by 2050 under the European Green Deal. And this involves strict regulations on emissions, investment in renewable energy projects, and phase-outs of fossil fuels. While the UK has its own net zero targets, reintegration into the EU energy framework would require alignment with the EU's renewable energy directives and emissions trading system. This would mean commitments to higher targets for wind, solar, and hydrogen energy, as well as full compliance with the EU's sustainability criteria. Additionally, UK energy companies would once again be able to participate in joint EU-funded renewable energy projects and benefit from EU research grants in green technology. Nuclear energy is also a major consideration. The EU's acquis includes strict safety and regulatory standards for nuclear power plants, for waste management and radiation protection. Before Brexit, the UK was a member of Euratom, the EU's nuclear regulatory body, which ensured compliance with safety standards and facilitated nuclear trade. Since Brexit, the UK has had to negotiate separate nuclear cooperation agreements, increasing bureaucratic complexity. Joining the EU again would restore participation in Euratom, ensuring harmonized safety standards and simplified nuclear trade, but it would also mean accepting EU oversight in nuclear policy and compliance with its regulatory framework. And this could also impact UK nuclear projects such as Hinkley Point C, which rely on international partnerships and access to nuclear fuel supply chains. And state aid control is another essential aspect of EU energy policy. The EU enforces strict rules to prevent member states from unfairly subsidizing energy companies in ways that distort market competition. Post-Brexit, the UK has sought to develop independent subsidy schemes, particularly in renewable energy and nuclear power. Joining the EU again would mean submitting to EU state aid rules, requiring approval for subsidies and compliance with competition regulations. This could impact the UK's ability to develop independent energy policies and might necessitate changes in government support schemes for energy infrastructure and innovation. At the same time, however, it could allow UK businesses to access EU energy funds supporting investment in green infrastructure. Energy efficiency is a critical part of EU policy, requiring countries to implement strict regulations on building standards, industrial processes, and transport emissions. The EU has binding energy efficiency targets and regulations that require significant investment in insulation, but also in smart grids and emissions reduction technologies. Joining the EU again would mean adopting these standards fully, requiring adjustments in UK policies on energy conservation and efficiency measures. While the UK has maintained some energy efficiency commitments post-Brexit, reintegration would involve stricter compliance with EU benchmarks and potential updates to domestic legislation. It would also allow the UK to benefit from EU-wide energy efficiency programs and collaborative research projects focused on sustainable energy solutions. A major consideration in energy policy is the EU's emission trading system, or ETS. The ETS is the EU's primary tool for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, setting a cap on emissions and allowing industries to trade carbon allowances. Before Brexit, the UK was part of this system, but it has since developed its own emissions trading scheme. Joining the EU again would require reintegration into the EU ETS, aligning carbon pricing mechanisms and harmonizing emissions reduction targets with the EU framework. And this could lead to policy adjustments, particularly in the UK's approach to carbon pricing and industrial emissions regulations. It could also impact sectors such as aviation and heavy industry, which are subject to stricter EU emissions regulations. From a regulatory standpoint, joining the EU again would require the UK to re-establish cooperation with energy agencies and institutions. This includes the European Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, or ACER, which ensures fair competition and transparent energy markets. Reintegrating would mean following EU decisions on energy market rules, on network regulations, and on interconnection agreements. And while this would provide stability and regulatory certainty, it would also require adjustments in the UK's energy governance structures. Joining the EU again would also open up opportunities for cross-border energy infrastructure projects, such as new interconnectors linking the UK grid with mainland Europe, enhancing supply security and price stability. So in conclusion, Chapter 15, Energy, highlights both the opportunities and obstacles of a potential BRITURN. While reintegration into the EU energy system would provide stability and market access and sustainability benefits, it would also require significant policy adjustments and, of course, regulatory compliance. For the UK, this chapter is not just about technical alignment. It's about ensuring a resilient, competitive and sustainable energy future within the European framework. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen.